A single insult has detonated a geopolitical firestorm. From Washington to Tehran, rhetoric has turned razor-sharp and openly violent. Iran's military and parliament are now issuing threats that echo far beyond words. What began as a verbal clash is now being framed as a line that must not be crossed. The confrontation began with words, sharp, personal, and public. President Donald Trump called Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei a sick man, openly questioning his legitimacy and urging new leadership in Tehran. In Iran's political system, the supreme leader is not just a figurehead, he is the core of authority, military, religious, and symbolic. Iran's response was swift and unmistakably violent in tone. Brigadier General Abu Faisal Shekarchi, a senior military official, issued a warning directly aimed at Washington. If a hand is raised against our leader, he said, it will be cut off and their world set on fire. He stressed this was not a slogan. Shekarchi went further. In the event of any attack, Iran would leave no safe place for its enemies. The statement was broadcast by state media, signaling it carried institutional weight, not personal bluster. The message was deterrence through fear. Then came Parliament. Iran's National Security Commission declared that any threat to the supreme leader would be treated as a declaration of war, not just on Iran, but on the Islamic world. The commission warned that such an affront could trigger jihad rulings by religious scholars and responses from soldiers of Islam worldwide. This is not routine rhetoric. By invoking jihad and global response, Tehran elevated a political dispute into a civilizational warning. It reframes Trump's comments not as criticism, but as provocation with religious and military consequences.
A stunning and explosive prediction is now raising alarms across the Middle East and Washington. A former U.S. ambassador to Israel is warning that President Donald Trump may attempt to assassinate Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as early as next week. Dan Shapiro, who served as U.S. ambassador to Israel under President Barack Obama, made the claim in a post on X, pointing to rising tensions between Washington and Tehran. The warning comes after Iran's supreme leader blamed President Trump for fueling violence during weeks of mass anti-government protests across Iran. Trump, in a recent interview, said Iran needs new leadership and described the 86-year-old Khamenei as a sick man. Shapiro wrote that Trump's remarks, combined with what he called Khamenei's provocative messaging on social media, suggests the U.S. president could authorize a direct strike on Iran's top leader. Shapiro also noted that a U.S. carrier strike group is expected to arrive in the Middle East soon, potentially giving Washington the military capability to launch major strikes inside Iran and defend against any Iranian retaliation. Trump's comments to @Politico on needing new leadership in Iran and Khamenei's mindless baiting of Trump on X lead me to believe that Trump is going to try to kill the supreme leader this week. There will soon be a U.S. carrier strike group in the Middle East, making it easier for the U.S. to carry out extensive strikes in Iran and be prepared to defend against any Iranian response strikes. Taking that shot at Khamenei, perhaps combined with strikes on IRGC and Basij command and control nodes, would allow Trump to say he is keeping faith with Iranian protesters he encouraged and fulfilling his threat to make the regime pay for massacring them. According to Shapiro, the U.S. could also carry out broader attacks on Iranian military forces. He said such actions would allow Trump to claim he is standing by Iranian protesters he has publicly supported and following through on threats to make Iran's leadership pay for what Washington says are massacres of demonstrators. Human rights groups and international observers say thousands have been killed during the recent unrest. However, Shapiro cautioned that killing Iran's supreme leader would not equal regime change. He warned that Khamenei's death would likely lead to an immediate takeover by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, resulting in a government that remains aggressive and deeply repressive. Shapiro stressed that lasting change in Iran would not come from a single military strike. He wrote that true regime change will only be authored by the Iranian people themselves and would require sustained international support, largely through non-military means. Shapiro served as U.S. ambassador to Israel from 2011 until early 2017, and later held senior Middle East policy roles under President Joe Biden.
The world stood on the edge of another Middle East war, and then suddenly, it didn't happen. A U.S. strike on Iran was widely reported as imminent. Threats were flying and military options were openly discussed. But at the last moment, President Donald Trump pulled back, claiming the decision was his alone. Now Tehran is firing back with fury, accusing Washington of plotting to swallow Iran itself. For days, the signal from Washington was unmistakable. Military action against Iran was openly discussed as unrest ripped through Iranian cities and security forces cracked down with deadly force. Reuters reported a U.S. strike was imminent and regional allies braced for impact. Then came the reversal. Asked directly whether foreign leaders intervened, Trump rejected the premise outright. He said no Arab state, no Israeli official, no ally changed his mind. He did. The trigger, Trump said, was Iran's sudden decision to halt mass executions of detained protesters. Hundreds of hangings allegedly planned, then abruptly canceled.
Did Arab and Israeli officials convince you to not strike Iran?
Nobody convinced me. I convinced myself. You had yesterday scheduled over 800 hangings. They didn't hang anyone. They canceled the hangings. That had a big impact.
The unrest inside Iran has been relentless. What began as protests over economic hardship spiraled into nationwide anti-government demonstrations. Activist groups say hundreds have been killed, thousands detained, and information throttled as the government cut internet access across the country. Trump publicly told protesters help is on its way, but the missiles never came. Iran's supreme leader did not welcome restraint with gratitude. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei accused the United States of orchestrating the unrest itself, calling it an American sedition, not a spontaneous uprising. He said Washington's goal was not reform, but domination, accusing the U.S. of seeking to swallow Iran entirely. Khamenei went further, calling the U.S. president a criminal, blaming Washington for casualties, destruction, and what he called slander against the Iranian nation. He framed the crisis not as Trump's policy, but as a permanent American strategy, regardless of who occupies the White House.
My lord, no God but Allah. Firstly, what is the nature of this sedition, the American sedition?
Planning things out, taking action. The goal of the Americans, let me quickly interject here, based on my extensive experience and several years spent within the Islamic Republic, I must state this clearly. America's ultimate goal is to completely devour Iran.
There is no God but Allah, there is no God but Allah, there is no God but Allah. From the very beginning of the revolution until this very day, the oppressive dominance that they had maintained over our country, by the hands of the people, by the hands of the youth, by the hands of all segments of the people throughout the entire nation, under the leadership of the great Imam, this dominance was completely eradicated.
From the very beginning, they've been planning to bring this back. They have once again placed Iran under their military, political, and economic domination. This objective isn't about the current U.S. president, mind you. It's not about the person who is president right now. This is about American policy.
This is America's policy. A country possessing these particular characteristics situated in such a critical geographical location, with all these facilities available, with such a vast expanse, and with this huge population.
They are simply unable to tolerate such a country with this kind of progress. The progress that is being made scientifically and technologically in various sectors.
This is not tolerable for an American.
We consider the President of the United States to be a criminal, both for the casualties and for the damages.
Also because of the insult he dealt to the Iranian nation.
We strongly advise you to retreat immediately. Do not advance a single step beyond this point.
If we really get going, we won't have any discussion about ceasefires and such.
We are telling you quite frankly right now, these blows you have struck, these extensive damages you have caused over the past 50 years, all the decency and considerable patience we have shown, you are simply not paying any attention to it. If we were to once again find ourselves in that era of the holy defense, specifically the war from its second year onward, then you can be absolutely certain that very serious problems will emerge for you.
You must stop right here, turn back. The Iranian nation is a highly discerning and noble people, not seeking war. But if it reaches a point where it becomes necessary to finish the task and other events unfold, we will still preserve our brotherhood and friendship with Saudi Arabia, with the Emirates, with Bahrain, with Qatar, with Turkey, and with Iraq.
But no base of yours in these countries will ever be safe. They don't seem to realize that Iran is just like Russia's snow. The further Trump pushes forward, the worse his situation becomes. If he had only stepped aside after that 12-day war, he would have truly understood the real depth of this whole incident.